Hey there, folks, and welcome to another episode of Crit Hit Interviews. I'm Arlian, and we're here today with Jean Canellas of development studio White Rabbit, the folks in charge of the pixel art Souls-like Death's Gambit, which, did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I meant also for the pronouncement of your name.
Uh, it was close. Yeah. I think the best. um, yeah, it's John Canellas. At least that's what I tell people to say. My last name is technically really hard to say. It's Canellas, which is a Spanish last name. So you can imagine
Canellas?
it's an Enya technically. I just don't even put it anywhere because no one likes pronouncing it.
Fair, fair.
Yeah.
To the folks in the audience, we generally kick things off with some icebreakers, but if you're seeking out some game related questions, like whether or not you'll be able to kill everything with just kicks, including flying enemies, feel free to check the list scrolling on the screen for when the game related questions kick off. But first off, just tell me a bit more about yourself.
Well, I'm a game designer, game developer, programmer. I do a little bit of everything on Death's Gambit. I'm a co-director with Alex Guadera, who is the art director. The best way I could explain my job is I do most of the programming, Alex does most of the art, and we both do design and writing, and we just co-collaborate. We also have a larger team of developers on our team from all across the United States and Canada. We have a lot of animators that work with us. Currently we have about 4 animators working with us. It kind of fluctuates depending on the time of development, how many animators we need. And we also have an extra programmer right now, Jonathan Divil, who's working with us, and a composer. I ended up talking more about White Rabbit than myself, but but that's kind of what I do. I'm just a director on Death's Gambit. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you'd like me to narrow it down a little bit, what got you into game development?
So what got me into game development? I just played a lot of games as a kid, and it's always what I've been wanting to do. At some point in high school, probably like 8th or 9th grade, I was just frustrated that I couldn't figure out. I would kind of ask around, even my parents and even people I knew, like if anyone knew how to make games. No one knew, so I just Googled game maker or game development online, and eventually I found the program Game Maker. And I just on my own started making small little indie games, and I just kept learning from that. And then when I got to like 11th or 12th grade, I submitted like my games as part of my portfolio to USC for their game design.
Nice.
Their game design major, and I got in, and then I moved to LA to study game design. I finished there. I did a few things in between, like an internship at Backflip Studios as a game designer. But as soon as I graduated at USC, I started this company with Alex Cabudero, and we've been making Death's Gambit ever since. That's kind of my development story.
So, like, part of your skills are like self-taught, but they're also partly from like USC. What
Mhm.
overall, like, what of the skills that game development has required of you to put to use, and has there been any other resources that you've had to draw on to learn those skills?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's as a game designer, I think everyone will say it's a little bit of everything, not only just from experiences in real life, all over the place. To I would say for me, programming has been a big one. I did a programming minor at USC, and that helped me a lot. And we did take a lot of movie making classes there, and that definitely helped me a lot for for doing story stuff in the game. I would say those are the things I've needed the most. I think playing games a lot have helped me with game design specifically. I When I was a kid, honestly all I did was play video games, and I think they helped a lot with game design going forward. And I've drawn upon mostly inspirations from games as opposed to any other medium really. I'd love to to honestly say that I draw a lot from books and movies, but honestly, I spent most of my life just playing video games. I think Alex could probably say a little bit more about. He draws a lot more about from art and other stuff, but I draw mostly my stuff from my experiences playing pretty much everything. I've played so much.
I mean, so what would your favorite game or genre of gaming be?
It's a good question, although I would say I don't have a specific genre. I play a little bit of everything. My favorite games. If I were to say my favorite games, I I have like a specific list somewhere, or I think it's somewhere along the lines of, and this is in no specific order, but my favorite games ever are kind of all over the place. I'll say Metal Gear Solid 3 is really one of my favorites. Dark Souls 1, my favorite Souls like, so that's there. I think Undertale recently has been up there as well. There's a little game by the people who made Kingdom Hearts that was way better than Kingdom Hearts. It's called The World Ends With You. I love that game.
Oh,
Um,
familiar with that, yes.
I think Smash Bros. Melee is on that list. Minecraft is on that list. Pokemon's on the list. And then weirdly on that list is, I think World of Warcraft's Burning Crusade is honestly even better than Dark Souls. It's like Dark Souls but better, and I don't think almost anyone's ever even played that. Okay, there's a lot of people that play World of Warcraft, but that specific expansion I think is genius, and it's just sad that basically no one can even play that because that expansion is just not playable anymore. But I think that all those games are big inspirations. I play a little bit of everything, but yeah, I think those are some of my favorite games of all time.
So, is there anything you're diving into of late, either just to unwind or possible just getting your brain juices flowing? So you said like video games have been a source of just inspiration and delicious
Yeah,
creativity fuel.
um, I think lately the biggest thing was Sekiro and Hollow Knight. Um, yeah, I would say those. I actually stopped playing Metroidvanias for the time being because I want to come with a first. So I want to get the game, the DLC almost done, and then kind of like take a small break and play a lot of Metroidvanias, and then be able to compare. It's honestly the reason why I want to do it is because when you're working in a game for so long, it's just hard to see what's good and bad about it. It even happened with the original release of the game. It's just hard to see. You've just been working on the same thing for so long, you don't even know what's good or bad about it anymore. So kind of what I want to do is just uh, this time around, just take a small break from the game and just play other stuff, and then be able to, and that helps put everything into perspective a lot better. I've realized, and that's one of the things I'm planning on doing is playing. I'm gonna play Bloodstained next, for example, and I wanted to play. What was the other one? I wanted to play Crosscode.
Hmm.
Um, I haven't gotten around those, but I guess the two that I've been kind of eyeing are Sekiro and Hollow Knight. I did also play randomly just because I needed a break and because it got announced recently that he was coming to Smash Bros. But I actually played Banjo Kazooie. Just very randomly decided to play through it. It has nothing to do with Death's Gambit or any inspiration about it, or no inspiration from Banjo Kazooie is translated into Death's Gambit. But I did play that recently.
Fair. So I was a little bit curious here, but like White Rabbit started out as a fairly small development studio. How did you end up meeting like Alex? And what was the process for taking on other people?
Alex and I have a pretty good meeting story, and that is, well, we met at USC. So he went to study the same. He did the same thing I did. Studied interactive media at USC. We met because we were the only two people in that class that were considered international, and for some reason, we had like the international interactive media meeting class before the actual class, and we met there because we were the only two there, and we just got along. But it's funny because I'm not international at all. So I don't even understand how I ended up there. Well, okay, I understand why, but it felt wrong. So I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and it was considered international even though it's part of the United States.
Yeah, that's weird.
And not even like, Puerto Rico is not a third world country. It's like it's a normal place. It's just a very boring small island. which is why I ended up playing a lot of video games as I grew up. But yeah, I went to USC and I ended up in an international meeting, and that's how I met Alex. And we just kept working. We just worked on games together a lot. He did a lot of really good pixel art, and I already knew how to make and program stuff, which is surprising. You'd imagine at USC, which is considered, I believe, the best undergraduate program for game design in the. I don't know. I believe it is by a few places in the top lists. You'd imagine that people there know how to make games, but I think people take it takes people about like 2 or 3 years to learn how to make just small games. And by the time I got to USC, I already knew how to make games. So Alex and I were just making stuff from like, I don't know, semester 1 or semester 2 of the first year, which is great. So yeah, we just worked on a lot of stuff together.
Huh. Sounds pretty good. And for the other people, how did you end up? Actually, first things first, you've mentioned that like you and Alex handle the game's narrative direction, but how does that work between the two of you?
So it's a good question. We sometimes he has ideas, sometimes I have ideas, and we just throw ideas at each other, and we're like, okay, well that's dumb, but that gives me a good idea, what you just said. Yeah, it's a lot of like back and forth. He'll sometimes write scripts, and I'll write the same script for the same scene, and we'll both be angry at each other because we want it to be a certain way, or he wants it to be a certain way, or I wouldn't say angry, but we're just like we do pretty much try to write the same story at the same time, which I don't think is the best. I think the original pitch for the game was definitely just me trying to make a Metroid game almost, which is not at all a Metroid game anymore. And it was about immortality.
I mean, that part's still there.
That part's still there, but it's changed so much over the years. And I would say the best way to explain the writing is Alex does way better dialogue than me. So he'll usually end up doing a lot of the finished dialogue. But we together just sit down and discuss like the overall plot. And I will most of the time send him dialogue, and I'm just like, this is terrible dialogue, but it hits the right beats. Can you help? Can you help me, please? And then we'll just talk about it, and then we'll finish it like that. That's pretty much how it happens.
Fair. Which you and Alex formed the studio, but what's the story behind having called it White Rabbit, other than like the Alice in Wonderland notes it hits?
See, that's a bad answer, honestly. I don't think we have a really good answer for title for the name of our company. Besides, it sounds cool, and it's a white, and it's based on the Alice in Wonderland thing.
Oh, I got it in one.
Gambit. Oh, sorry. So the name of our company, it doesn't really have that much of a good story behind it. It's just we thought it sounded cool, and it had like a good, it had a lot of connotations about it. We wanted to make games that are kind of a trip, and I think White Rabbit has that connotation that the games will be kind of weird and crazy. But that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, you got the vibe across of like the down the rabbit hole.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so you can feel good about that. So you guys are like, again, this team of two. But how did you end up working with Adult Swim Games?
That is a longer story, but I'll try to do it as quickly as possible. But when we were first posting gifs about the game, original intention was to do a Kickstarter. That's why our original trailer, honestly, is not super, like, it has a lot of stuff that we worked hard to get into the final game. There's some stuff that's not in the final game, and that's because a lot of the stuff we made like in a few months during the very beginning of development, and it was just kind of like a proof of concept. It wasn't like a playable game. It was just supposed to be for Kickstarter, kind of like a lot of the Kickstarter trailers are. If you look at, for example, Hyperlife Drifter, their Kickstarter trailer, pretty much all their bosses are not in the final game, and it's because it wasn't a playable thing. I believe that trailer. I don't want to misquote, but I remember talking to some of the devs of Hyperlife Drifter, and they told me that their trailer was in Flash, I think, and it was just animations. It wasn't even a playable game. And that was kind of the original trailer for Death's Gambit. It was supposed to be a Kickstarter trailer. But when we posted a lot of the GIFs and the trailer, our original intention was to do Kickstarter. But then as soon as we posted it, a bunch of publishers contacted us, basically saying, "Don't kickstart it. Just let us fund your game." And one of them was Adult Swim, and I believe it was during Indicade, I don't know, like 4 years ago or something like that. We ended up pitching the game to like 10 or 12 publishers in a matter of 2 days. And literally every single one of them said yes. I don't think I'll ever have a better pitch process in my life.
Wow.
We're talking about we even pitched to people like EA and Activision, which I was like, oh hell no, I'm not. I kind of don't want to. I don't want to give this to EA, but everyone did say yes, including Nintendo and Sony. But Adult Swim gave us the best deal, and we ended up going with them because it was just a really good deal.
How much impact did that partnership with Adult Swim have on the development of Death's Gambit, and did it overall impact the timeline of its release?
So yeah, so Adult Swim has been okay. That's a good question as well. So they haven't, in terms of like game design, like for example, they don't really have, it's part of the deal that they have with us. They really don't give us anything, any feedback in terms of design. It's really our game to make, and we kind of have the power to do whatever we want. It's very nice. Not every indie developer has, or just developer for games has the creative freedom that we do, and we're very thankful for that. They also don't. They really just let us do whatever. I think it affected the timeline only because I think halfway through development, we were trying to we were basically running out of budget, and we needed to get more budget to finish the game because it was taking much longer than we expected, as most games do, sadly. And it took us a long time to figure out the deal term changes for that. And during that time, we basically had very little budget to go through, and it kind of slowed us down a lot for the original development of the game. But then once the deal terms were finalized, we were back to full development, and we finished it. I do think things could have been a little bit more smooth, if we had been able to calculate our budget better. But that's basically the extent of it. I think so. So I did see your post on Reddit asking people questions about Adult Swim's relationship to the release of the game, and whether the buggy release was related to them. And honestly, the answer is really no. It was mostly my fault. I think part of it is just that we set a release date 3 months in advance, and we were just not ready. I thought we would be ready, and I just couldn't get it ready on time, no matter how hard we tried. And by the time we realized that we were going to be releasing the game, we just weren't going to be ready to release the game. It was honestly too late. We would, so for example, if you're in development, in a situation like that, it was just a lot of inexperience too, because I just thought that we'd be able, well, if it happens, then we could just delay it again, I guess. And then and then I was like, wait, no, we're actually going to waste a lot of money if we delay it. For example, marketing already had a lot of plans and had already pretty much started a lot of their marketing plans to release the game, and had already started a lot of things going. So you can't just delay a game easily at the end, and it would have cost us a lot to delay it because of that. At the end of the day, the patches have fixed up the game. Patch 1.1 and 1.2 finally have brought it to the place that we wanted it. But at the end of the day, I don't really, there's no conspiracy theory here. It's my fault. I was just inexperienced, and I messed up a lot of stuff related to the release date leading up to it. I was very optimistic about it, about the release date, and I wanted to announce the release date way ahead of time on purpose so we could build a lot of hype. And it didn't work out. And part of it also was that we released like the same month as honestly 10 other Metroidvanias. It was like the craziest Metroidvania month of all time. August
Can't
last
recall
year.
if it was the same month as Iconoclast.
It was the same month as Iconoclast, the same month as Dead Cells, the same month as The Messenger, the same month as Dead Cells, the same month as, oh my god, Chasm, the same month as there's a La Mulana 2, There's a few other Metroidvanias that came out that exact same month. It was ridiculous.
I mean, you listed Dead Cells twice, but also fair.
And also Dead Cells, and also Dead Cells came out that month. It was pretty crazy, and I definitely regret that. And I think for the DLC, we're just gonna announce a release date basically when it's done, 100%, and just release it like a few weeks after that, max like a month after that.
Okay. For the people who are asking me to go and try and get a release date for you from that, it'll be done when it's done, correct?
I don't even know the release date myself.
Okay.
But look, I mean, I could tell you where we're at right now, and that might give you a better idea. Like I posted in a devlog recently, we're definitely in a polish stage. We are still in the early polish stages, though. There's a lot of cutscenes that need a lot of love, and that's kind of been the biggest issue. It's just that the cutscenes have taken me honestly 3 times longer than I expected. I'm pretty good at making boss battles at this point, but cutscenes and writing is hard, and especially when you're making a story this complicated with like there's just so much dumb shit that we put in the story. Like making a story about immortals is hard, and it creates a lot of like, okay, well, if this is a thing, then we got to make sure there's not a plot hole because of this, and it's we ended up just having to. So the writing becomes a problem of, okay, well, we're just kind of stuck at a plot point. Let's just write it, even if it has some issues, and we'll keep polishing it as we go until it has no issues. But the problem has been sometimes that for me, I just get kind of like writer's block, but like more like programming cutscene block, because some of these cutscenes are honestly very ambitious. I think we finally gotten to the point where they're really good, but it still takes a lot of work. And I'm super excited about some of the crazy stuff we're doing with the story, but I can't talk too much about it. All I gotta say is
I'll dip
it's
more into
going.
those questions
It's
in
a
a bit.
yes, it's going into place. It's going in the direction that fans want it, but we're also doing some twists that I think people will be super happy and excited and like just like blown away by. I don't want to overhype it because it's not done, but yeah. Also, just in terms of just development overall, like just to explain where we're at, I'm still polishing boss fights. I'm still polishing levels. We still have to, for example, finish some systems. Like the map isn't fully complete, and that's kind of where we're at. But everything is kind of just there. Like you can play it from beginning to end, including a lot of DLC stuff, but it's not it's not polished yet.
Okay.
So just wait. We want to make sure it's good. And cutscenes, if it wasn't for cutscenes, it would probably be done by now. But cutscenes have been a major pain. That's all I can say.
So, I mean, this actually segues into rather well since it sounds a little bit stressful, but since stress is actually a very large component that people have been tackling in the game development industry, do you have any practices or hobbies that you engage in to minimize or handle that stress?
uh, yes, that is a very nice question, and I do thank a lot of our fans for posting very nice things to us on Twitter and on Reddit and Discord. There's a lot of people concerned that either me or people on the development team are working too hard. So thank you guys for your concern. I'm okay. Some of the stuff that I do is, well, there's a few things. Going to the gym and working out, or just going for a jog or a run, is probably one of the best things for stress, in my opinion, or for me, it's been. If I'm particularly working on something very hard or something if I'm just having a bad day, working out or going to the gym or doing something physical helps a lot. There's a few other things. Taking a shower at strategic times during the day helps. Or maybe even taking a second or third shower during the same day if I'm very stressed. I will do that sometimes.
Okay, fair. I've been there.
And what else? I think watching sometimes to me, working hard for extended period of time, sometimes I will just watch motivational videos or something. I'll watch something that'll get me hyped up. So those are some of the stuff that I do to help mitigate the stress.
So I think you already answered this, but Pagliacci needs hugs. provided our first community question. I still love that name. Uh, but Doctor, I am the clown Pagliacci. Anyways, they just wanted to actually know if the team was actually holding up emotionally with all the stress.
Well, yes, I'm I definitely don't ask anyone on our team to work more than 40 hours a week, and I don't think I've ever asked anyone to do extended hours or anything. Most of the time I'll just be like, you know, just how are things going, or I just give people tasks and they'll give them back, and I never ask anyone to work overtime. That said, as a director on the project, I feel like I have to, be an example and work extra hard. And it's the common like startup development thing. When you're starting a company, it's just kind of expected that you work extra hard. Especially making games is very hard. So I do work more hours than I should, but I do. I'm holding on okay. There's been a lot of times in development where things have been hard. I think I think last year was very hard emotionally. Not honestly, not during release time. Release time was honestly probably one of the better times. I will say, for example, the last 3 months of release, or the last 3 months before release, I gained like 10 or 20 pounds, and I was weighing the most I ever did the day of release. I was like 185, and then as soon as the game released, I started going to the gym a lot more, and I started just giving myself more time for myself, and I lost like 30 pounds in like months or something. And I went back to normal. If that gives you an idea of where I was emotionally. There's a lot of stuff that happened in last year. I think at the credits, I did at the end of the credits give a shout out to my grandfather who passed away last year, and that was really hard for me because he was very important to me. He's an amazing person. He was an amazing person, and he passed away that year. And I think there's a lot of stuff that happened in our family and me relationship wise. There's just a lot of stuff in our lives that was happening last year that was very hard, and I tried my best to work as hard as possible through all that, and I did, but it wasn't easy. And now I think this year things are things are a lot easier. And because of the I don't know, this time around I've given myself a lot more leeway with the time that the DLC needs to take. And even though I'm working stupid hard still, it feels nicer just because I don't give myself pretty much any deadlines. I just work through it. I just work through a DLC, and it'll be done when it's done. um, I I'm not saying that it's not that I'm like lazy. I've definitely been like pushing myself to finish this. But
Just
um,
learn not to announce release dates.
yes, just being a lot nicer to myself essentially, and being a lot more realistic, and just just making sure that it's released when it's good. That's pretty much it. Yeah, but I'm good emotionally. Yeah.
So I figured this makes for a good juncture to actually segue into the game since we've been talking a fair bit about it and also the DLC. Now, Death Gambit's been out for a while, and we've already sort of touched on what it is because it's sort of Souls-likey and like the themes it touches. But I was wondering if you could maybe provide an overview of what the upcoming DLC is bringing to the game, both narratively and mechanics-wise. And if you want to touch on the base game and how it compares, I mean, I'm not going to stop you.
Sadly, those are two very long answers, but I'll try to keep the theme. Okay, I'll start with the themes real quick. And I'll try to keep it as quick as possible. And I'll be honest, like a lot of the original themes that we wanted to get across with that Gambit never came to fruition, partly because the themes just didn't line up with the gameplay. This is hard. Game development is hard. um, it's Death's Gambit is not something like Undertale where the mechanics literally, or something like I don't know, Spec Ops: The Line, where like the mechanics literally, how do I say this, are in the mechanics and the gameplay itself are closely tied to the themes of the game. And I've tried to make that possible, but it's hard. I mean, I think the original themes that I wanted to do for Death's Gambit were about were we're a little bit more inspired about whether, how do I put this? Oh my God, there's so much to it, but none of it ever come across or never came to fruition. And it also changed over the development of the game, because at the beginning of the game, I was very like, um, I was I was through the belief that I wanted to work as hard as possible to make the best game possible, make something that really stood out and stood the test of time, etc. And it all the conversation with Genova Shen, the creator of Journey, creator of Flower and Flow. He's a famous game designer, and he came to. I met him at a class at USC because he studied at USC, and he talked about how he just worked stupid hard and he just wanted to be remembered, essentially something like that. I don't want to paraphrase the wrong thing, but from what I remember, he talked about game development being really hard, and you just have to decide whether you want to kind of basically sacrifice your life to make really amazing stuff. And when I heard that from him, I was like, "Fuck, I don't." But I do get it. I do get certain game designers like Hideo Kojima or him or even famous animators like Miyazaki of Studio Ghibli. All these people sacrifice their lives essentially to make great work. But Death's Gambit was kind of about that question: is it worth it? Like, is it good to immortalize yourself essentially through your work and work super hard to do it? And halfway through development of Death's Gambit, my answer is no. But I think what I was trying to do was more just present the question, and that never came to fruition. Really, I don't think that that the game is at all about that. And it's more about other stuff. And especially now with the DLC, I think we're going to touch on a lot of different themes about more about family and dealing with, I don't know how to say this, but dealing with I don't want to see. Here's the other thing too. When you're talking about the themes of a game, it's hard to talk about it as the developer yourself or the designer yourself, because you kind of take away a lot of the meaning of the game if you just tell people what it's about. So I rather put it kind of vaguely, but themes wise, I think a lot of it has to do with dealing with controlling entities and depressing. Oh my God. Okay, just think about if someone wants to just think about what Thalamus could potentially stand for, and what his relationship is to Endless, and his relationship is to Soren.
I thought that Thalamus sort of represented a primal fear of death, because he very much seemed like
The
fuck
original
with
idea
you in
for
that
Thalamus
regards.
came from me trying. Well, it was very H.P. Lovecraft inspired. Thalamus for sure. It was also at a time where this is before Bloodborne had even come out. Or I do think H.P. Lovecraft inspired stuff is honestly kind of ubiquitous at this point. But Thalamus was definitely supposed to represent kind of. My original intent was to create a villain that had something that was worse than death. And what I believe is honestly worse than death is an eternity of torment, essentially. And that's how the original idea of Thalamus kind of came about. But it's definitely very H.P. Lovecraft inspired. And sorry that I've rambled a little bit.
Entirely fine. When you're like, an eternity worse than death, that's just reminding me of like his boss fight where you're seeing all those awful visions the whole way through. I'm like, yeah, I see it.
I think we will answer a lot of questions about Thalamus and about what happened at the end of the game and about Death himself, and even and I think one character that fans have really asked themselves a lot about, that we're also gonna finally kind of talk about, is Ash, who is just in Journey's End right now. But Ash was a character that I personally wanted to develop a lot more, but it just didn't make sense. Like the story kind of just went a different direction than the direction that it would have gone if Ash had been developed more.
Ash is the dragon lady, right? I think.
So I don't want to say too much
No. Like
about
Journey's End.
Ash.
She's the one that's like
Um,
partly a dragon, also partly a human, sort of weirdly mutated together. Or is that someone else?
yes.
Okay, yeah.
So without spoiling anything or without saying too much, Ash is technically not the one talking there. The one talking there is basically the dragon underneath, and we're gonna explain a little bit more as in the DLC. It's not. I wouldn't say it's like the main plot point right now of where the DLC goes, but it will be. I think all the questions that people have been asking will be answered.
Okay. What exactly are you bringing to the table, though, here mechanically? We've talked a bunch about narrative. It's sort of like story points to a degree, but one of the things you mentioned was this sort of like the Metroidvania update DLC type thing. So how is that breaking down?
Yes. So I guess I took apart the first half of that original question, and now let's go to the second part, which is more about the DLC itself. We're basically doing a revamp to the world. I would say that it's mostly just like the same, but we're just adding more areas to the original areas. There are some edits. I think the hub is getting a lot of edits. It's not, well, not a lot, but it's getting just a lot of new stuff that you can get through. Once you get the double jump, you can get maybe a few new items in the hub. Once you get a different Metroidvania upgrade, you might be able to get something else. We also moved around some areas. I can confirm right now that Amulvaro's observatory is not in the same place. And lore-wise, we have explained, or we will explain how the world and why the world has changed. It's pretty wild, but it does make sense, and I think players will be really happy with how we did it or why it makes sense. And I think if you start to think about what reasons could have caused the world to change, you start to unravel where I guess this DLC story is going. But we have a lot of Metroidvania upgrades. I believe we have double jump. The air dash, you just get it now. So I can confirm the double jump, you now get it from the bulwark. The air dash, you are going to get it from the first Phoenix Rider boss. Currently, I don't think that's going to change. There's a dive kick that's a talent. There's a slide.
So the air dash isn't a talent anymore?
No, it's not a talent. You just get it from a boss, yeah.
Sweet.
And say you have already beaten the game, the original game, when you come back, and you won't start with the Metroidvania upgrades. You'll just be able to. You just have to open your map, and then it'll tell you go back to the boss room where you should have gotten it, and then you can just go to the boss room and you'll get the upgrade. So if the double jump is from the bulwark, just walk back to the bulwark room and you'll get it. And that's kind of how we're doing it right now. It may change, but that's the current idea. So another thing that's becoming just a Metroidvania upgrade is the warp bombs. I don't think many people have seen those, but the noble can actually buy warp bombs from his merchant in the hub. And these are these bombs that when you throw, you can teleport to the location of the bomb. And we're just going to make that like something that players can just do. It's just an upgrade. And there's just a lot of new areas you can access with warp bombs. And we've done a lot of cool stuff with that as well.
Huh.
There's a few. I'm trying to think of what else. I'm trying to remember. There's a crash down. So what we're calling a crash down, which you get from Ione. Maybe I shouldn't be spoiling these, but these are just like the first few Metroidvania upgrades you get. Essentially, I don't think we're not going to do a lot. I don't want to give the impression that we're doing like 10 different things. I've pretty much told you most of them, but I won't tell you guys where you get the warp bomb or anything. But the crash down, you get it from Ione. You can use that to access new secret areas. Yeah.
I mean, thematically, if I had to guess where you're going to get a warp bomb from, it'd be the guy in Gardevoir. Because it's sort of techie sounding.
You don't get it from Bi-Surge, no.
But okay. Well, there's my guess.
But you'll see when you play the game.
All right. So you're not actually going to have to remake a new game from scratch to then go and enjoy this. It's not like the changes to things are going to end up with you being like stuck in an area.
No. What I'm thinking of doing is just if you start the game up in the DLC and you've already beaten the game, your character will be teleported to the hub.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, okay, that works.
and yeah, there's a few other things that will be introduced to you right away, but I think that's honestly the best way to do it. There's because honestly, so many areas are changing, including the final level. If I were to teleport you, or if you were to stay, say, in the final level, and you just started the DLC in the final level, you'd be like, "Where in the, where am I?" Or you'd be a little bit confused because the Citadel layout has actually changed a little bit. The area, I wanted to improve it a lot. I wasn't 100% happy with the layout of the final level, and I changed it a little bit. So yeah.
Okay. What led to the decision to continue working on this gambit and to continue to refine it mechanically and add more content?
So the first part is that when we were done, I think a lot of fans and friends were like, this has a lot of potential. There's a lot of games that you just play and you're like, well, I'm good. But I think a lot of people finished Death's Gambit and we're like, honestly, I kind of want more. And we had a lot of people surprisingly saying that it was actually too short. And we had a lot of people saying that it was that with more refinement, it could be honestly a fantastic, not just a good game, but be like maybe even a classic. So I think that's kind of what led us to keep working on it because we just knew it had potential to keep working on it. It's not something that I originally wanted to do or had any intention of doing. The original game was the final, had everything that we kind of wanted to do. Yes, there were certain things that were cut, but they were all cut for a reason. And most of them were not doing in the DLC because I think a lot of the DLC stuff is just better than any of the stuff that we cut. Okay, the original game was obviously supposed to end with endless, but I think a lot of people expected certain things to end differently, and I think we looked at that and we said, okay, fans kind of expected this. Let's do that. Let's just do go in the direction that people think this will go, and just kind of keep the ball rolling. To talk a little bit more about the DLC, so the DLC has a lot of world changes, but it also has a continuation to the ending. There are Once you beat Endless in the DLC, there are two more bosses after that. But there are also some optional bosses in the world itself.
Nice.
And you can just kind of do whatever you want in whatever order, essentially. And there are important decisions to make at the end, and there are different endings. And there are, and that is all I can say. But I think this time around, I think part of the goal with it has been, okay, what has been the reception of the game? What can we do that will make this game better? And part of it was, I felt like it was actually too ambiguous. I think the story where it ended, and I think where we went with the story was honestly too ambiguous. There's a lot of things that I thought people would get that they didn't. I thought people would understand what Gardatum, what the role of Gardatum was in the story. I thought people would understand what the role of Thalamus was in the story a lot better. But it ended up being a lot too ambiguous. So we're gonna explain it a lot better, and I think fans will be very happy with where we're going. I think it's going to be really cool. We're very proud of it. So um, I don't know if I've answered that question fully,
I mean, it's
that's where I'm at.
pretty efficient. Just like a much fluffier question, I guess. But like, do you have a favorite bit of music in the game? Like, I've always been super partial to Thalamus's theme because it's ridiculously cinematic.
I love our composer. A lot of his tracks. I mean, I constantly am like, "Are you kidding me? This is amazing." A lot of the new tracks for the DLC. Every single time he sends me one, I'm like, "Are you what? Like, what is this?" And then I end up listening to that track like pretty much on loop the whole day whenever he sends me something. But for the original game, I have a lot of favorite tracks. I would say the Endless boss fight track is definitely up there. The Thalamus track is amazing. I think the story behind the track is more like I wanted the boss to just be super shocking right away, and I looked a lot for music that was kind of hit the right notes, and I ended up finding some inspiration from Mad Max Fury Road soundtrack, and I was like showing Kyle like, okay, well this part sounds like super like loud and like bombastic, and yes, the Thomas track was definitely Mad Max Fury Road inspired. And I would say that was one of my favorites. And I would say Bi-Surge is also one of my favorites. It sounds like something straight out of something like Metal Gear Rising. Um, and sadly, I think the audio is not well tuned in that boss fight in the original and the current state of the game. So for the DLC, I want to make the music a little bit more audible in that boss fight. People seem to like the Amulvaro boss fight music a lot. I I thought it was all right, but I have more favorite tracks, but people seem to love that one a lot.
All right. So, what was the hardest challenge when initially making the game versus what new hurdles has making the DLC brought to the forefront, other than scheduling release
Hurdles
dates?
of the okay, hurdles of the original. Those are two different questions. Hurdles
Mm-hmm.
of the original game and hurdles of the DLC. Essentially,
Mm-hmm.
the original game had a lot of different challenges, especially the first few years. We had a lot of struggle finding out what the game was honestly about, um, and we, you know, it's common knowledge that the original game had a lot of Shadow of the Colossus inspired boss fights, and we struggled a lot to make those work. Like a lot. I would say those were the hardest part about the original development. And you can tell because a lot of those changed a lot in the original game. You know, Kusith, Forgotten Gain were supposed to be, you know, climbable bosses, and they were supposed to be essentially puzzle bosses almost.
Yeah, I actually didn't know you could climb the Forgotten Guy until like probably 20 or 30 hours in, where someone was like, "You can climb that, by the way," and I was like, "What?"
Yeah, and that was just kind of like a remnant of that version of the boss where it was climbable. And we just kind of left it in. The way I look at it is more like, you know, and the original Dark Souls, you can actually fall and kill certain bosses, and Demon Souls as well, I believe. Or no, I think it was just Dark Souls. Sorry, just Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2. There's some bosses you can fall and kind of obliterate a boss. And that's just kind of like a secret strategy to certain bosses. So I kind of just felt like, oh well, what if some bosses you can just climb and there's just like a secret way to deal with them. The Kuseth was originally a boss where you had to like go on, like you have to wait until him to you had to wait until he would walk forward, heave, and then you go underground and then end up behind him and then climb his tail, and then you end up on his back, and then when you're on his back, he would try to heave and get you off and do all these spells, and it was boring and it was hard. It was just kind of finicky. And I think part of the issue was that it felt like it was just straight out of a different game. It's not that it was particularly bad; it just felt like it was part of a different game. And if I were to do Shadow of the Colossus style boss fights, I would probably, well, first of all, we learned a lot. Like I think we could do it today better, but I would just do a whole game about it. Wouldn't do a Dark Souls meets Shadow of the Colossus thing. I think it's just very hard to do right, and that's why we struggled a lot. So that was those were the hardest things. And the Phoenix boss was also a climbable boss, and I think I posted, or I may not have
No, you
posted some bits
posted a
of the original.
GIF of that where you're like on it in the air, and I was like, "Oh, that's awesome! Never saw
So
that in the game."
that we also struggled a lot to make that work, and it was just like you have so little space. So you would fight the Phoenix Rider on top of the Phoenix, and the Phoenix Rider has like an enormous range. So you would just get hit all the time on top of the Phoenix, and the Phoenix would be like turning and like flying and doing loops. And if you weren't holding onto the Phoenix, you would just fall off. And it was honestly sounded cool on paper, but it was annoying as hell. And um, man, we tried, but it was just they all just sucked. And it would have taken us honestly like probably like another year and a half to make them work, and honestly belonged in a different game. I will one day post gifs of how those bosses worked originally. I think it was cool. But yeah, DLC wise, the biggest hurdles. Let's see. I think it's been easier because once we released, we just got a lot of feedback, and we were like, okay, well, this worked, this didn't work. Let's improve the things that didn't work, and let's make the things that worked even better. I think the biggest surprise for us was that a lot of our fans were just Metroidvania fans. A lot of them weren't as much Dark Souls fans. A lot of them were just Metroidvania fans, and we just were like, really? Okay, then let's just make it a little bit less Dark Souls. Let's make it a little bit more Hollow Knight. Let's make it a little bit more Symphony of the Night or whatever. And I think fans will be honestly happier with that. Let's make it more about exploration and finding secrets and try to do boss fights that are just very much just like about timing, just like learn all their animations, and people kind of want that. I think in the original game we experimented a lot. We tried to do a lot of crazy, weird, ambitious things that honestly were not necessary. You know, if you look at something like Hollow Knight, honestly, in my opinion, a lot of their bosses are actually really easy to make and they're very simple. And I think we were like, wow, okay, well, I guess players just wanted a simple Metroidvania game, and we were constantly trying to push the envelope the whole time, trying to do all kinds of weird shit. Like, I guess the Eldritch Council stands out as like a very like weird boss that I really love myself, but everyone else hates. And we did weird stuff like the Thunder Lord.
I'm fine with the normal version. The heroic version of the Eldritch Council can eat me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way about that boss for sure. Well, like one example of like something I was totally wrong about was DPS race stuff. Like the original game had a lot of mechanics that basically forced you to beat a boss under a certain timer. Um, and people don't like that. I tried to make it work. I get it. So in the DLC, there's pretty much almost no mechanics like that. And it's just one example of how we're listening to fans. People complain about the stamina system being too unforgiving, especially if you don't know that abilities don't take up stamina, which is kind of like what the original, you know, we intended players to use abilities when they were out of stamina. And if you do that, then you basically don't run into stamina issues. But a lot of players never figured that out. So we just made stamina a lot more forgiving. We removed a lot of DPS raise mechanics. But I will say, in defense of that, I do believe that having a timer on levels or bosses will always make things infinitely more complex, because then you're constantly questioning how you can make things better, how you can improve, and how you can do things faster. And I think I like that, but other players don't. And I totally get that. But that's just one example of like places where I had to kind of swallow my pride.
I think it would low-key punish anyone who decided that it would be a really good idea to make a vitality build.
Yes. And it does stifle a lot of, I guess, build diversity for sure. But that's just one example of how I, you know, swallowed my pride in terms of like trying to, you know, make a game instead of for me, but just for everyone, kind of. And that's a lot of the places where I personally failed at, was just trying to, or just I just wanted to do stuff that I liked instead of, and I ended up not realizing certain issues that were in the game because there were just things that just other people cared about that I didn't. And after listening to everyone's feedback, I think we're finally at a point where I get it. I get what people want out of this game, and it's the DLC is essentially almost at this point. We wanted essentially to be a re-release of the original game with just more stuff in it, and a lot of improvements based on fan feedback. So the struggle has been just of DLC has been that. I will say the hardest thing of the DLC has been the cutscenes for sure. But yeah.
Okay. I have a couple of questions here, and then we're going to be hitting on to a lot of DLC questions. First off, Pagliacci needs hugs. Wants to know, like, if there are specific feelings or thoughts you were trying to specifically elicit with the ending of the base game.
Yes, I mean the final boss. I've always felt that the best final bosses in games are very lore heavy, very emotional. So our goal from the beginning was to make the final boss an emotional moment. And I think we achieved that. I think we wanted players to wonder whether what they're doing is right or wrong, and whether Thalamus or Death are good or evil, or who's wrong or who's right. And that that is kind of where we're going with the ending. I don't want to like kind of spell out what I wanted players to feel, but yeah, we did definitely want to make you feel emotional about that situation. You know, you're fighting obviously Soren's mother, um, and she's kind of gone kind of down the wrong path,
A little
um,
loopy.
and you have to stop her so you can destroy the source of her mortality. So it's not an easy moment, and I think we're going to go into that moment a lot more in the DLC, and it's going to lead into a lot of new content.
See, my question is, does she actually recognize Soren when she cut him down in the first place? Because it's like became immortal,
Yeah.
so I can go and keep my promise. Oh, I also totally kickstart the game by personally murdering my son. I mean, if Thalamus doesn't just do it for her because you just dicked around and stayed alive too long.
I mean, I think we'll definitely go into that in the DLC, but I also, not to just cop out on that answer on that question, but I think she does recognize him. She just believes in her cause so deeply that she doesn't care what it costs her. I mean, she literally killed like an army and killed him. I don't know if she recognizes him. I mean, she's just killing the whole army. It's honestly up to you to really think about it, because she doesn't even mention Soren then, but she definitely
Yeah,
recognizes him in the sewers later on.
because it was like because as far as I took it, she took on the whole immortality thing to keep her promise to Soren. So the irony then being that she kills him as like one of her initial acts was really darkly funny.
Yeah. Yep. Um, so I do agree. I think it is somewhat ambiguous whether she recognizes him there, although she does recognize him in the sewers. And there's definitely some dark irony to that.
Yeah, I recognize him despite the whole like gangrenous pallor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, the other question was, first off, I'm just gonna ask mine is Amulvaro in his tower alludes to like some sort of cosmic horror bad thing going down, which is sort of probably separate from all the other cosmic horror bad stuff. There's a lot of cosmic horror apparently. Is the DLC touching on any of like what's driven him? I don't know.
um, Absolutely. The answer is yes. But Amuro doesn't really get any time in the DLC. His story's kind of just there and done. But what he alludes to is definitely touched on, and um, I mean, I think it's fairly obvious that part of what he's talking about is Thalamus. It's not just Thalamus, but there's more to everything than that the players know. And I guess what he's trying to say is just, you just have no idea. I mean, in my opinion, part of that was inspired by H.P. Lovecraft. I think a lot of their stories are about the fact that there's just these powerful entities and powerful, gods, essentially, like death
These
and Thalamus.
unknowable horrors
Well,
lurking at the
yeah, just
periphery of human comprehension.
exactly. So that's kind of where I was going with that. And you get a little bit of taste of that in Ilnoth, and I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that and explain what he was talking about in the DLC.
All right. So, ending wise, for just as a general idea, don't want spoilers here at all, but Peglation Eats Hugs wanted to know what sort of feelings you're looking to provoke and emotions with the new content and conclusions. Just is it going to be ending on a similar emotional beat? You mentioned there's multiple endings, so
Yeah, there are multiple endings. It will probably end on a similar emotional beat, I guess. Yes. Um, it's more of a wrapping up whatever stories fans kind of wanted more closure on.
hmm.
And But yeah, similar story beats in terms of, like, I guess a lot of the new stuff is pretty emotional. Yeah. Um, There's a lot. I don't know what to say though without spoiling anything, so it's hard to talk about it. Um, I'll just
Oh,
say it gets pretty crazy. I think I don't want to hype it. I I don't not because I don't think it's good, but just I just want players to experience it, and that's it. I don't want them to come with any expectations. Usually, that's probably the best way to experience things. Um,
fair.
but there is there's a pretty big twist that explains pretty much everything that happens in the DLC. Okay, not everything, but it explains why the world changes, and it explains what happens post the current ending of the game. That I think is really really cool, and I think everyone will be fairly surprised and happy about the direction that the game goes. It's nothing I don't think anyone will expect. It's very yeah, it's very unexpected. But I do think the bosses themselves, I think, are more. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think it goes in the direction that players want. But at the same time, it has a lot of unexpected twists. That's all I can say.
Okay. Okay. I have a lot of DLC questions here. Most of them are mechanics focused, which I mean, you should be able to touch on with less oh my god spoiler moments, right? Maybe.
Mm.
The question we're kicking this off with is you've already talked about a number of movement skills being added to the player's kit. Things like the double jumps, the crash downs, the warp bombs are going to be a thing. Um, the air dash is just going to be part of the kit now. But are there going to be perks that are going to modify the utility of those, either generalized or class specific ones?
So I remember reading that question actually when someone posted it on the Reddit. I did think about it. Right now, the answer is honestly no. I have thought about it. Um, you know, whatever, doing something like changing the dodge roll to like a blink or something. I've thought about stuff like that. It's not impossible, but it's not currently in the game. If I find some time and I find something cool that I could do to those upgrades, I will try and do it. But as of right now, the answer is no. The Metroidvania upgrades are just there, and you can't you can't modify them. Um, there's already a lot of animations we're doing in the game, like so many animations coming into the DLC. So, um, so it just depends if it seems high priority enough, and if we can come up with a cool enough idea to make it worth it. That's pretty much it.
Fair. On the subject of perks, there is a lot of what new ones coming in. Can we get spoilers on what we have to look forward to? Are they going to be tied to the classes or a lot of generalized ones? And is there going to be a significant boost in the number of talent points that players get, or will these be just more fine tuned? Like, I'm curious what the
Hmm.
overall customization process for the characters are going to look like and how much a respective character is going to have to play with in build diversity.
Okay, I could definitely answer that very thoroughly. So just to explain the talent system as it is right now. Right now, there's four talent trees now. One is just the original talent tree with some modifications. Um, then there is a class tree that you get also at the start of the game, depending on your class. If you chose a wizard, you get a wizard talent tree. Um, and then eventually, once you beat an optional boss in the DLC, you will unlock the third talent tree. And that third talent tree lets you choose the class talent tree of a different class. So you essentially get to get two different class talent trees. Um, and the second
Mm.
class talent tree you can choose once you beat that boss. Um, and then there's a fourth final talent tree. Once you beat the final boss of the original game, you unlock the fourth talent tree, and it's more of the fourth talent tree is more like an advanced talent tree that just has a lot of basic, simple talents. Like I think one of them is just like you increase your soul energy by one or two, but you can put like 50 talent points into that if you want. So there's a lot of like long term stuff in the fourth talent tree. Um, and that is because I wanted players to just be able to keep finding talents in New Game Plus and etc. To keep having a reason to keep getting talent points essentially for a long time. The way you gain talent points in the DLC is similar. You get them from bosses, but you can also get an extra talent point every game every playthrough from a heroic kill. You can also buy a few talent points from different merchants. So I believe the total talent points per playthrough will end up being somewhere on the lines of like 45.
One
So
per
to me,
boss times 2 plus all the merchant ones.
yeah. You might be able to find some talent points just in the world or something like that. I can't remember where all of them are, honestly, but there's a few just hidden in the world, few through merchants, etc. And it'll be like 45 to like 50 per playthrough, something like that. Which should will cover, I think, most of the first two talent trees essentially. If you wanted to just max those out and not do 30, that's kind of what I'm thinking. And if you go into New Game Plus, you can fill out the rest basically.
And then just start dumping into the final talent tree, which is just like, oh, you have spare points? Start boosting stats.
Etc. Yeah, exactly. And that is how it works.
Okay, that's actually pretty cool. All those people who glitched out their talent points are gonna be like, oh, works.
I mean, when the DLC comes out too, you'll get a free respec, and I think I might increase the amount of times you can respec per playthrough. Right now, you can only respec twice, I believe. I might increase it to like 4 or 5 times per playthrough.
Okay. Are the number of classes staying the same between pre and post DLC?
Are the classes staying the same?
Is there the same number? I mean, technically by
Yes.
perks, they're going to be different. Okay, so same number of classes.
So to that, it's not that we haven't thought about adding new classes. I think if we do anything post this new content, the first thing we'll do is new classes. So that's my answer to that. But there's no new classes in the DLC.
All right. So here's another question then, and this is one that I've been really curious about for a while. Boss weapons have been a thing you guys have been talking about for a while. You've done art streams for them. They've been really neat. At this point, has the manner they'll be acquired and the manner they'll function be further fleshed out?
So right now, the way you get some boss weapons is just from killing certain bosses or enemies. For example, there's a Drake Knight sword now. That's the sword that the Golden Knights have in the game. You get that from killing the first Golden Drake Knight in the hub. Now, for example, that's one of the ways you can get the swords. I want to make some fairly easy to get and some fairly hard to get. Partly because some of their effects are really fun. And if we let players get some of these cool weapons early on, I think it'll make the gameplay even better. So that's why I want to make some of them kind of like easy to get, some of them hard to get. Some of them hard to get because I want something for players to look forward to. And I want certain weapons to just be, all right, well, this weapon is just really hard to get, but it's really good, and I have to do all these things to get to it. And I can confirm that there is an NPC that lets you craft like some of these ultimate weapons. There's not a lot of crafting in the game. I'm not like adding a crafting that's like crazy, but this NPC lets you craft some of the best weapons, or some of the new weapons, with certain items that are kind of hard to get, and that's kind of the way I'm looking at these new weapons. Yes, I think that answers most of it. I wanted to say something else and I forgot, but yeah,
I mean,
that's all I can say about the weapons.
The other thing I was gonna add is this fucking name is so hard to say, but Yami Tokuyami no Sumeragi wanted to know if these weapons would have fixed stat scaling, limiting them to certain builds, or if they'd be more flexible. Are any of these weapons going to be dual stat or multi-stat? Like, will they be able to scale with other builds?
Okay. So there's a lot of weird things we're trying with them. I think one thing, honestly, I don't know if I can answer that yet because we're still trying things with weapons. I know, for example, I can give a few examples of some weird things we're trying. I think there might be like a specific sword type that will usually scale with, say, strength, but actually it's the same sword type, but it scales with finesse, which might be what he's asking. So the answer is yes. So I don't know. There could be, this is not an example of something that's in the game, but there could be a spear which usually scales with finesse, but scales with strength. Like we might do something like that. There is also, I think, one of the cooler ideas that
Time
we're
to get
doing
my
is we're
spell
doing a
spear.
weapon. Yes, we could do something like that. Yeah. But one of the weird things we're doing is we're doing a weapon that has more stat requirements that you could possibly have. So it's a weapon that has, I believe, a requirement of like 200 strength. And we still haven't added it into the game, but I also want to do a shield that's that as well.
So like
And
it'd
that is
be a new
specifically,
game plus weapon specifically when your stats get boosted.
well, no, only the Sentinel can equip that because the Sentinel has a passive that lets him equip anything with half the requirement. Um,
Oh.
so a
Oh.
Sentinel with 100 strength will be able to equip us that weapon, for example.
Well, I mean, the other thing I thought though is because the new game plus, right, the cap increases eventually for your like your stat maxes. So I mean, you could wear it eventually. You just have to
So
all in on a stat.
so actually, you can only increase any stat up to 150.
Wait, even
Um,
in
e-
like new game plus 7 or
even in New
whatever.
Game, yeah. So New Game Plus, everything can go up to 150, and that's it. Yeah.
Oh, hmm. People lied to me.
I don't know if I'll change that, but it still is a thing. Yeah.
That actually makes that weapon hilarious. So only a sentinel could use that, which would make like picking that secondary class and then grabbing like a sentinel a really neat option.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's just really neat.
Yeah. That is. I mean, the goal with the weapons, in my opinion, right now is to try to make items that um, create new builds or create new ideas of gameplay that people haven't done before. So,
Or
yeah.
complement the existing builds. Sentinels now have their
Yeah.
things, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
So here's the other question. Is there going to be any weapon skills or perks tied to the bosses in the same manners as the boss weapons? For instance, would you be able to possibly acquire like the sword abilities that Endless uses?
So, the quick answer is probably not. We were already doing a lot of animations. There are. I don't want to say not. It's not happening, but it could, depending how much time we have, and how much budget we have. We are making as many weapons as we can make with the time and budget we are allowed. If we have enough time to make crazy, weird animations for some weapons, we'll do it. Um, some weapons will for sure have new animations. I can confirm that. But I can't confirm that we'll have like all kinds of crazy shit. The
Okay.
problem is that already I already want to. For example, I already want to do all animations for all weapon types, um, and we have to prioritize something. We have X amount of time and budget. So the question is, what makes the most sense to put that money into in terms of animation? Should we make new weapons? Should we add new animations to the existing weapons? Should we, should we add like an alternate heavy attack to all current weapons? Like I've thought about all kinds of stuff that we can do, and we're still doing stuff. We're doing a little bit of everything, kind of, um, and that's probably the best answer I can give you. Is just, yeah, you'll see some new animations. You can maybe expect some cool stuff, but don't get overly hyped for you know we're not a enormous team big enough to do like all the animations for endless for the player or all the animations from the Dark Knight for the player. It's just not going to happen. It's just not possible.
Alrighty. That definitely answered their question. So, you folks have mentioned there's like a lot of new weapons being entered the game. Umbra 1997 wants to know just how many compared to the base game are being added to flesh out the overall armory, and just adding to that, I was curious if there's any new weapon arts being added to the thick of things, not necessarily boss weapons, but just new weapon skills in general, or even weapon types.
There are new weapon abilities. I wouldn't say it's a huge list, but there's new ones, and it also depends because again, we're at that point now. We're just adding stuff if we have extra time to add new weapon abilities. We'll add it, but I can't confirm it because we're not at the end of development yet, so I don't know. That said, we are going to try to add as much stuff as possible. I think the Spellblade, if you in the beta we added a Spellblade specific ability, where you can create it. Basically, you create a clone of yourself in front of you, and it shares your same animations, and you can attack enemies with it. It has its own utility and usage, which I think is pretty cool. And we're going to try add more stuff. We'll see. I can't confirm anything. How many weapons? Also a similar answer. I can confirm that we will at least have 10 new weapons.
Is that including the boss weapons or separate?
It's not weapon types. It's just new weapons, including the boss weapons. Yeah. I don't know how many we'll get time to do, so I just can't see a number. But I can give you the at least 10 confirmation. I want to do more for sure. I want to do so many, but we'll see how much time we have time to do. Maybe we only get time to do X, or we only get enough time to do. I don't know. I don't want to give a number because people will then mention that later on. But
entirely fair. So if things don't get tossed in with the initial DLC release, will some of these be post-release goals or?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, I think one of the first things, if we do anything else post DLC, the first thing that we'd like to do is new classes, and with those new classes would come new weapon types. I wouldn't expect a lot. I wouldn't expect oh yeah, we're gonna make. Yeah, don't. I'm not gonna say numbers. Just
okay.
Just we want more things. We'll see how much time we get and how much we do. But right now, I can confirm that the DLC will have at least.
I actually wanted to touch on this, and I completely forgot earlier, and I just remembered. So I am so sorry. But okay, so in the base game, there's the ending, and then there's the mortal mode ending. If you are that good and confident that you're not going to die like paste, which
Yeah.
I definitely am not. So I was curious how many new endings there's going to be added, and if any of them are going to hinge on the same sort of. Please God, let there not be another mortal mode challenge.
So we're not. How do I say much without spoiling stuff? I don't know. I can confirm that there is at least 3 new endings. One of them is kind of a joke ending that you can get pretty early into the game, which I wanted in the original game, but it wasn't high priority enough. And then I can confirm that there's 2 other main endings, and there might be more stuff. I just in terms of how to get to it, obviously you guys will have to figure out how to get these endings. I don't know if anything will be as hard as the Mortal playthrough. I don't know. But if there is something that hard, it won't be the most important ending, if that makes sense.
Fair.
It'll just be something cool to get. But I can confirm there's new endings.
Okay.
And they will make sense where there's new endings, and they'll be cool.
So one of the things that stuck out to me was the mention of new game modes in Death's Gambit. So this is already the normal mode and mortal mode. Could you clarify what you mean by new game modes?
Yes. So we have, I think it's 4, maybe 5. I don't remember. I have to open it up. Game modes. So in the beta, we tested a few of them. There's a randomizer mode where I believe every item you pick up is randomized, which is inspired by the Dark Souls randomizer runs. And I believe people who tested it had some good feedback about it. There were some things that just didn't make sense. You would get basically some of the best items early on. Usually, it would end up where you would get Heroic Endless's aura, which gives you really good soul energy, generation essentially, which is pretty much overpowered to get super early on. And I do agree, like pretty. If you play through the randomizer run, you would consistently get really good items early on. So we're gonna try to spice things up a little bit. We'll improve it. And there's also a heroic forced mode, and that is one of my favorites. I don't think other people will really like that one, but basically, heroic forced means you have to beat a boss in heroic before you can progress past that boss. So, so the Owl King, you have to beat him on heroic before you can progress to the hub, for example.
God.
Again, an example of something that I like that most fans probably are like, fuck that.
I mean, I would probably do it because I tend to kill him in heroic as soon as I can to start farming items off him.
Yeah. Well, one cool thing you can do is you can actually do multiple modes at the same time. So you could do randomizer and heroic forced, which could help you a little bit. You could
Just get +6 drops off him consistently.
You could, yeah. You could just farm the first level a few times and get some newer drops, and then do the heroic versions. I think that would be a fun playthrough. What else do we have? We have a Fink mode, which wasn't fully fleshed out, really. I mean, I don't know what to do for the final game. I just did all kinds of weird stuff for that one. Like during the Owl King fight, every single time there's a portal, like a bunch of Finks just come out of the portal, and you have to kill them during the Owl King boss.
Oh my God.
And similar things would happen in other boss fights as well, where like suddenly like 10 Finks fall out of nowhere and try to attack you. Stuff like that. Fink mode is just like kind of all out, kind of weird stuff will happen. And beta testers, I don't know if anyone recorded any of that stuff, but people talked about it on the Discord. There's some info on it online.
All Flink favored all the time.
Yes. What were the other modes? I'm trying to remember. Oh, we added something recently. I think it's Madness mode, and basically the gear you equip, except your weapons, can only be equipped near a save point and unequipped near a save point. And if you die, your equipment gets destroyed. Yeah, yeah. Except your weapons. Partly because a lot of weird things would happen if you had no weapons. But I do want to find a way to make it so weapons also get destroyed. We'll see if I figure out a way to do it. But yeah. I believe there's another mode that I'm forgetting, but whatever.
That'd be heart-shattering with a boss weapon. Or like the Owl King. Sorry, I'm just picturing that. Like you die while wearing like the Owl King boots or like a boss weapon, and I'm just like,
Yeah. It's not for the faint of heart, for sure.
Okay, so compared to the base game, just how much is being added in regards to overall areas, bosses, just the size of the DLC versus the base game?
I'm just thinking about it. Honestly, it feels like I don't know the exact number. It certainly feels like 50% bigger. It certainly feels like the world's 50% bigger. I wouldn't say there's 50% more bosses. There's definitely not. But there's a lot of new world content, and the reason for that is just because I wanted there to be a lot to find with the new upgrades, and I wanted there to be more of a oh my God, what's the word? Why am I blanking out? More of a reward for exploration. So we've added a lot of new nooks and crannies to find, and because of that, the world is definitely much bigger. And even if it's not 50% bigger, a lot of new areas have gotten some edits, some including, the Citadel, the final level. I think it's much better because of the edits that we've made. With some of the enemies from the new levels, we decided to put some of those in the final Citadel area as well, so it'll feel very different.
Sounds good.
And yeah, that's the best way I can explain it. It's just is a little
the Citadel the actual final area now? Given you mentioned there's some post-game stuff.
It is not. No.
Okay. Yeah, had a hunch there. So, given that the world's opening up, can we expect new NPCs and quests to indulge in?
Yes. Yeah. There's definitely new NPCs. I don't think we showed any of them, but we'll do a showcase soon.
Okay. That's actually. Oh, right. We talked a little bit about this before, but for the sake of asking all my questions and having them here, so rumors have abounded for a bit that there's a way to push equipment past plus 10. So I'd like you to get on the record and sort of clarify if there's any truth behind this rumor and if it'll be clarified in the DLC, or by you folks here, so I can totally get a recording of plus like 11ing something. And, is the overall progress system for the gear one of the systems being reworked? Because it's rather difficult to get stuff to the plus 10 mark in the first place.
So that's very good questions. Well, partly because in the DLC we're changing a little bit of how, you know, I'll explain right now. So to your first question, there is a way in the current game to get to plus 11 and plus 12. I'm not, sadly, gonna go into it here. I'm gonna give people a little bit more. I'm gonna give people a little bit more time to try and figure out what it is. If players don't figure it out close to the release of the DLC, maybe like a few weeks before, I'll just post on Discord or on Twitter how to do it. Um, it's you can only get weapons to plus 11 and plus 12. It's very particular and weird the way you do it, which is probably why no one's figured it out. But it is possible. It is not just a rumor. It is true. It's partly a rumor created because I've told people that it's true. I posted on Discord once, like, yeah, I mean, hopefully you guys figure out what it is. No one's done it. Similar situation with a secret room in the game that no one's figured out how to get to, which I will probably just explain how to get to it like a few weeks before the DLC comes out, because it'll honestly be unnecessary. Because once the DLC comes out, you'll be able to get to plus 11 and plus 12 on weapons and armor without the need to do whatever you need to do in the current game. And because the secret room kind of alluded to some stuff that we wanted to talk about, or story stuff that we were going to go into in the DLC. So yeah, that's the answer to that. The upgrade system in the DLC. So some of the changes that we're doing is Immortalite. We had a lot of people say and complain it's definitely too hard to obtain. It's definitely too hard to get weapons and armor to plus 10. And we do agree. We did have players say that disenchant. Why can't you just disenchant a weapon and get Immortalite out of it? So that brought us to the changes that we've made in the DLC, and the changes are that you can disenchant stuff that's plus 5 and on, and you won't get Immortalite, but you'll get a new item called Armor Scraps that will be useful for creating for creating some of the new, I guess, weapons that you might be able to craft, or you might be able to use the scrap for other stuff that's really useful. The reason why you can't disenchant into Immortalite is fairly simple. I just want to make heroic bosses have a reason to be there. If Immortalite was easy to disenchant from any plus 6 or plus 7 weapon, you would just be able to farm it from certain enemies who constantly drop plus 5 or plus 6, and you wouldn't have to get Immortalite from beating Heroic Endless or something like that. Heroic Endless gives you, I think, like plus 5 Immortalite or something like that. I want there to be a reason to do those bosses. So that's why. But I did agree that disenchanting something like plus 5 or plus 6 didn't feel good enough. So we're going to pretty much, I think, double the amount of soul stones it gives you, I believe. And then it's also going to give you some other items when you disenchant them as well that are going to be very useful for creating new armor and new weapons. So that's the new system that we're doing. So I think that way players will be fairly happy. There will also be a lot of new ways to get Immortalite. So it will be easier to farm it or easier to get it. I was just afraid of there not being enough of a progression or long enough progression in the main game. So I could confirm Immortalite is much easier to get in the main game, or in the DLC. But now that there's a way to get to plus 11 and plus 12, there'll be a new resource that you'll want to get. Right now, it's called Dark Matter in the DLC. And you get it from beating the new heroic DLC bosses.
God damn.
And basically, you will also be able to find some of it in the world. But if you want to get the most dark matter per playthrough, then you will have to beat those heroic bosses. You will probably be able to get a few things to plus 11 and plus 12 fairly easily, but not everything in one playthrough.
Okay. Just like, man,
that is
just
my
trying to
current.
plot out how to get like my nice optimized armor of whatever. Oh, is the currently there's sort of like a best end game gear set for all the various classes. It's like there's the what is it? The clothes you get in the Dead City for finesse builds. There's the strength armor you get in the Citadel. There's the mage armor is a little bit more scattered about, as I recall. But is any of that sort of changing up so that there's new final gear, also different colored capes?
Yes, there is new, what I'm calling, I guess, I'm calling it like tier 4 and tier 5 armor. Tier 3 is what I usually call like the best wizard, the best strength, the best intellect, the best finesse gear. Tier 4 essentially gear you'll be able to just find in the new DLC areas, and it's just better than the current best finesse, strength, and intellect gear. And then there's a tier 5, which you can create out of the armor scraps that you can disenchant from any plus 5 and on weapon or gear.
And they're
And
the
the idea,
end game stuff.
yeah, the idea is that that's like, well, if you're like super end game or new game plus, that's something else to look forward to. That's my goal with that. Yeah.
Fair. Okay. That'll make the whole progressing through New Game Plus and not getting smeared into paste thing a little bit more feasible.
Yes, and and talking about difficulty for a second, I wouldn't say we've made the game particularly easier, but a lot of the new abilities and options that you get, and just all the new Metroidvania power ups, etc., that you get, it'll make the game feel a little bit easier and a lot more forgiving. I think in the original game, we honestly needed to playtest some things a little bit better. I think some things like the Dark Knight boss ended up being a huge spike in difficulty that we didn't expect. And then Endless, the final boss in normal mode, ended up being a little bit too easy. No, easier than I expected. We're trying to even things out a little bit.
Not on heroic, she ain't.
No, on heroic, she's ridiculous. But on normal mode, we did get a lot of feedback of players being like, "Why was that so easy?" And then the Dark Knight, I saw people literally dying like 40 times before they killed it, and I was just like pulling my hairs out watching people die on streams.
I didn't find him that bad until heroic, and then I found heroic Dark Knight to be a huge issue.
Well, what happened is a lot of players never figured out that you could kill the enemies that revive him in the level, so then he wouldn't get revived at all in the boss fight.
Oh, what? He can be revived from the boss fight?
So there's like 4 caster enemies in the level before the Dark Knight, and if you don't kill them during the Dark Knight boss, they'll come in and revive him, making the fight harder, obviously. If you kill them in the level, then he doesn't get revived and he just dies. And the original idea was that, well, it's really hard if you don't kill the enemies in the level. What happened was
I'm a murder hobo
did that.
and killed all of them, so I never discovered this.
Well, that's why you found it easy.
I was like, oh, this is relaxing. Oh, that's like that. God damn it! Isn't there that one boss in the original Dark Souls that has little dudes outside his arena that like revive him so you get?
Yeah. Demon Souls also has a boss like that. It's like the wizard lady in 3-1 in the Tower of Latria. She gets revived if you don't kill like some zombie dude outside her church or some shit. So that was a bit of an inspiration from that, yeah.
Sorry, that's just I never knew that mechanic, and that's so hilarious to me. Cause like I empty out the entire stages on the way to the boss.
Sadly, most players never figured that out, and they just ended up dying to the boss like 40 times and being like, "What is wrong with this boss? This is so hard. This is impossible." And I just felt pretty bad. So we made it a little bit easier. Yeah.
Like, so by the way, when they revive him, like the enemy that revives him walks into the fight and is killable, correct?
It is killable, yes. So you
So
could
they just
kill.
have to kill him 5 times. It's fine.
No, you have to kill him twice. But he also has like a timer where when the timer runs out, he becomes like buffed and he deals like double damage. So if he gets revived, chances are he will get buffed and then he'll like destroy you. um, so yeah.
I need to intentionally stream doing this boss fight badly.
I should put an achievement for doing it badly.
I totally should, just so people do that now. So yeah, I have some more community questions here though. First off, Emery's want to know if there's any chance that New Game Plus, either during the DLC release or just later down the line, will incorporate its own distinct enemies and associated drop tables. Sort of like the
So I
Dark Souls 2 New Game Plus.
Yes. Okay. So right now in the current Negan Plus, there are like new enemy placements in a few places. It's not a big change. It's not some big changes. There's also some like Journey's End specifically changes a lot in New Game Plus. It becomes quite a nightmare. But it all depends on how much time we have to do it. It's not the highest priority. I can confirm that some of the loot tables are changing a tad. Partly because we did get some complaints on Steam a while back that New Game Plus loot tables were exactly the same. And I do agree. Beating, say, New Game Plus 3 Heroic, I don't know, Dark Knight or Bi-Surge is much harder than normal game, those bosses, Heroic. So
Yeah.
what I'm thinking of doing, and what I've already done, actually, is most of those same items will just drop, but at higher levels, essentially. So, like, say Bi-Surge drops a +8 cape, then in New Game Plus 2, he'll drop a +10 cape. That is already in the game. Some of the items just increase in level, essentially, and upgrade.
So wait, if you killed him in like New Game Plus 4, would he drop a +11 cape?
Good question. I believe I might cap it to like +11 or something, so you have to like upgrade the last one. I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on that. I have to think about it thoroughly. Maybe
I'm not gonna
Maybe
quote
it'll just give
you.
you plus.
You. This is all you. It's all you're saying right now.
No one else who listened to this quote me on that. But I'm just saying there will be changes to the loot table to make it improved for New Game Plus, because you're obviously doing harder content. Those bosses have more HP. They deal more damage, so you'll get better items.
And more
I can't
Immortalite?
confirm.
And more Immortalite?
Well, yes, they obviously drop Immortalite. So in New Game Plus, the Immortalite stuff resets. So I actually okay. So you're saying like maybe like in New Game Plus 1 it'll drop instead of 5. In New Game Plus 2 it'll drop 10 Immortalite. You say?
Yeah, that was my hope. My fond hope.
Sure. I mean, here's the thing though. In the original game, there will actually just be a lot more Immortalite in the DLC. So I have a feeling people will complain about it less, because we're just dropping way more of it in more places. But yes, I agree.
I'm super hyped, to be fair. I'm like restarting a save file from scratch for the DLC.
and I honestly I hope players do, because there's just new areas everywhere, and if you just start the game from the beginning, I have a feeling it is probably the best thing to do. It doesn't really matter. I think players can just start from the end of the game, essentially. But there's some new cutscenes at the start of the game, and some small changes that we're doing. So if you want to experience the full experience, I would just say start a new class that you've never done before when you start the DLC. Maybe if you've never played a wizard class, definitely try it out. If you've never played the scythe class, start the DLC with a new scythe class. That's why we made new classes, so that the game feels different on each playthrough.
Oh, right. So by the way, Nerevar wants to know if there's any info planned for the anniversary of the game's release, such as a release date for the DLC. I think you already went on to that as a no. Further info on its content, or even a roadmap.
Man, so I would love to. And in fact, I'm just being honest. Like, we honestly wanted to have the DLC done by then. It would have been honestly perfect to release it, same day as the original release. But I'm not gonna just do that and mess up the release. I will see. We might have something to show. I do think we should celebrate it in some way and have something to show. But I can't confirm anything. There, it's not. We're not going to announce the release date on August 14th, if that's the question. Yeah.
Dev stream watching you fight Heroic Endless on NG+9.
I've thought about that actually. Well, +10 actually. I would love to do a stream where I beat just the hardest stuff to show it's possible. Endless Heroic and Eldritch Council, you can +10. I think being the hardest stuff in the game right now. Just to show that
and
it's possible.
Amulvaro.
Amulvaro is very hard, yeah.
He gave me more difficulty than the Eldritch Council did, but that's because I always build a glass cannon.
I think the thing is that Eldritch Council is so it's more of like a damage and health thing. Like if that boss has a lot of health, which it does in Negan Plus, it becomes so much infinitely harder than in Negan Plus 0. While Heroic Amulvaro, as long as you just know the mechanics, it'll fairly feel like a similar fight, I feel. In Negan Plus 10, because I've done it, I've actually beaten all the bosses in Negan Plus 10. Not easily, though. But I mean, I have to do it, right?
I mean, fair. Jesus, though.
But I think Eldritch Council Heroic on Negan Plus 10 is probably the hardest. Yeah.
Does the timer for it change at all?
No.
Wow.
It's definitely possible. I mean, it's not like the reason why I want to do it on a stream is to be like, yeah, I mean, you can do it. But anyways.
Okay. So yeah.
I do believe in the DLC. I've been thinking about ways to make that boss fight, make the timer less meaningful, because I know people have been complaining constantly about the DPS race stuff, and I've pretty much removed or hampered all of it. For example, in the DLC, and when players tested the beta, the Owl King heroic mines, they go away after some time. It's not a long time either. So that mechanic basically makes it so the boss can go on forever if you wanted to. And I've made a lot of changes like that, quality of life changes, to make sure that bosses are not about just, hard because there's a timer on them. So Eldritch Council is pretty much the only encounter in the game that still has a timer. And I'm trying to figure out a way to improve that. So we'll see.
Okay then. So next question is DJ Normal wanted to know if there's any chance of the dev room coming back for science, they say. Definitely
for
science.
God. It's so frustrating because once players have something, it's hard to take it away from them. They'll always feel dejected about it. So we had that debug room, which was a massive mistake. I don't even want to talk about it, honestly, but
I actually never used it either. I found out about it after the fact and was like, oh, that's neat.
I believe it was only on GOG, it was only on GOG, and it was, I believe, on Steam for 1 day. Anyways, whatever. Will it be back? The answer is probably not, but if it does come back, I will not just let you go in. It will probably be something like, oh, well, if you beat everything in the game, then you can just go to the dev room, because whatever, you're beating everything. So that's probably what I'll do.
Have you beaten every heroic boss? And done like on mortal mode? Have you? Fine, you could use the dev room.
Not like that. Some people thought that was the way to get to the secret room. I can confirm it's nothing that ridiculous. Jesus Christ, don't put yourself through that pain. None of like the two like remaining secrets, like the weapon upgrade to like +11 and +12, and the secret room, they're not something like a mortal run doing all the heroic bosses. It's nothing like that. It's more just that it's obtuse. Then, so no one's figured it out.
By
But
obtuse, are you talking about like sitting in a room facing a certain direction for a certain amount of time and then walking to another section of the room, looking at a wall and waiting a certain amount of time, or like not that obtuse?
I think it's not that at all. But I think you're going the right direction, at least for the secret room. Like the secret room is very weird and silly. But yeah, the other one is just something that's just particularly challenging to do, and people just haven't done it. But anyways, or maybe it's just bugged out. Honestly, I need to test it out today because I'm just like, why hasn't anyone figured it out? Though I also would believe that no one's figured it out because it's not something anyone would honestly do ever. So, anyways, yeah, debug room probably not. I'm sorry to everyone who wants like an easy mode. It's gonna be easier in the DLC just because you have all these Metroidvania upgrades. It's gonna be fine. We've balanced out the game better. We've ironed out the kinks of like, oh, this boss is way too hard, like Dark Knight and Endless maybe being a little bit too easy. Some enemies were too hard. The Golden Drake Knights are a lot more fair, like the animations for them. We've improved them a bit. People will complain about some of their animations. So yes, the Golden Drake Knights are easy, but it's not because we just made them easier. It's just because their animations are easier to read and just better overall.
I'm just super hyped for new colored capes. That's all. I was like, oh, new equipment tiers. It means different colored capes. We're good.
We will have those too.
Do you have any good memories of someone playing your game you'd like to share? Perhaps a moment you felt inspirational, and also, just any moments you thought were absolutely ridiculous.
Sure, I have a little bit of both. I mean, there's definitely some playthroughs where at the end people were like, "Wow, what a great experience!" Like, there's a lot of people who love the Thalamus moment, and a lot of people who love the Endless moment, or like just both of those boss fights. And when they were done, they were just like very impressed. Seeing a few famous like Twitch streamers and YouTubers playing our game is kind of like surprising and like just shocking. So those have been great moments. I think forgetting who there was a famous Twitch streamer played our game, and when he was done, he was like just blown away and loved the final boss and the story, and that was very. It felt like it made things worth it. Yeah. So I would say just when people are just those two bosses usually get very good reactions out of people, and I love that. Just seeing everyone's reactions to those. Bad moments, I would say there's also a few streamers that like just had bad playthroughs or just for some reason like just things didn't go well. Like I think Forsen.
Dark Knight.
Well, yeah, Dark Knight. Yeah, I think Forsen played the game with a Great Hammer, and oh my god, I regret this so much. The Great Hammer in the main game had like or I think it might still have it, but it has like a thing where the second part of the attack and the third part of the attack have like hyper armor. So even if you get hit, you still keep on doing the animation, and it actually makes the Great Hammer way too strong. And Sporson purposely used the Great Hammer because it handicapped him, but then it just made the game way easier for him. And he was like, "Why is this game so easy?" And he just wrecked everything with the Great Hammer. I was like, "Why did I give that hyper armor?" And now the Great Hammer doesn't have hyper armor. So, anyways, yeah.
Thanks, Forsen. Do any of the weapon arts have hyper armor at this point, or no?
There's that mithril boots that are super finicky and weird. I don't like them. There's like, so the mithril boots give you like hyper armor every like 30 seconds or something weird like that. It's so weird. The parry technically makes you invincible. There's a few. I'm trying to remember what has hyper armor. There's a few small things I can't think of off the top of my head, but most things just don't. I do think it's something that we can explore more with our new abilities or weapons for sure.
Alrighty. So at this juncture, is there anything else in the cards for Death's Gambit once you have this DLC released?
So I mean, the answer is, probably. I can't really confirm anything. It's just we want to finish this DLC, and when we're done, we'll probably want to add more stuff, and we'll probably do it. I can't confirm what it'll be, but the answer is yes. We definitely want to do and add more things, whatever it may be, whether it be classes or who knows. I won't go into it. I'll just say that we want to do more.
So once you folks are satisfied with the state of Deaths Gambit, if that ever happens, you just keep making it a lifelong project. I mean, for all we know, it could just be like the Dwarf's Fortress of Metroidvania Souls likes.
God.
Do you intend on working on a sequel, a separate project, or something else?
Well, yes. So that's a complicated answer. In my opinion, this DLC will probably feel like a sequel because there's so much story. Okay, I wouldn't say there's like a lot of story beats, but like it progresses the story, and that's why it'll feel like a sequel. Um, uh, Death's Gambit 2 cannot be ruled out, but it's not something I would do right away if I ever do it. Um, I would probably want to work on something else first, and or I will definitely take a break. I've said this to Alex many times. When I'm done, when I'm fully done with Death's Gambit, or after this DLC, I'm gonna take a long break, a long deserved break. And after that, or in between or during my break, I will be prototyping different ideas. Alex wants to jump straight into a new project. That'll be his thing to do, but I will take a break. The Death's Gambit 2. I don't know. There are ideas for it. I'm not saying it's not possible, but don't expect something like that, or expect it for a long time. Just know that we are going to answer pretty much all your questions from the original game in this DLC or whatever content comes out for the game, whatever is left. And we had ideas for a Death's Gambit 2 that we're actually integrating into this DLC. So some of that stuff related to that character Ash. I don't want to go too deep into it, but I think we're super proud and super excited to show you guys what it is. We can't wait to show it.
Fair enough. So anything you want to share with the audience down at this juncture, whether it's just something you're working on, words of wisdom, just other odds and ends.
Nothing. I mean, it's just I personally am very hyped about this DLC. The more I get to look at the way it's coming along, and I'm just super proud of it. I don't really want to overhype it. It'll turn out to be whatever it turns out to be. Um, but I can confirm that we do believe it's turning out like some of our best work for sure. And I think it's going to turn Death's Gambit into something very special. Some of the story changes that we've done. When I pitched some of these ideas to Alex was like, "Oh my god!" Like I think some of our people on our team have been working on the game just through just knowing how exciting some of the stuff has turned out to be. So yeah, just look forward to it.
Fair enough. In which case, is there, just since we're now at the final part, is there any indie projects that you have had your eye on? Stuff you'd want to refer the audience to?
Man, I used to play so many indie games back in the day when I was, I guess, in high school and at the start of college. I would just play every small little thing. But these days I haven't had much time. Small indie games. I don't know. I guess I don't know if Hollow Knight's sequel is something that is indie at this point. I guess Silk Song is something.
I think it's indie. I think it still counts as indie. It's just it's an indie that everyone's friggin' aware of.
Yeah. I think obviously this is going to take probably a million years, but Deltarune Chapter 2 and 3 I'm very excited about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think oh my god, there's a new game that just got brought in from Yacht Club Games that was like Cyber Shadow, I think. It's really good.
I have not heard of that.
Oh my god! Let me see. I hope I'm.
Wait, yes, I have. Yes, I have. I paused for a second and then I'm like, never mind. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's the Ninja Gaiden like the old school Ninja Gaiden game by them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fair.
It's Yeah, it's Cyber Shadow. Cyber Shadow. Yeah. I'm trying to think. There's a lot. There's a lot I could plug in. I don't know. I I'll yeah. It's hard. There's just a lot of stuff. I don't know what to plug without feeling like, oh man, I should probably plug literally everything. So I'll
I
just leave it at
mean,
that.
it works. Overall, I would really actually like to thank you for coming on today and talking with me, answering all these questions. I know this ran a bit long in the tooth, so I
Yeah,
am
that's
really
okay.
grateful for you providing all the insight that you did. To the folks in the audience, you can buy/wishlist Death's Gambit on Steam. For news and other psychopomp prompts, there is a Reddit of our Death's Gambit. There is www.deathsgambit.com. You can find their Twitter at deaths underscore gambit. Jean Canellas on Twitter, as well as a Facebook of Death's Gambit. No underscore that time. And yeah, those will be in the description too. Is there anywhere else you'd care to send people? I believe there's also an official Discord, which
Yes.
is that one
The
just like
Discord.
Death Gambit?
Yeah, the Discord URL is on our Reddit, so you just go there and you'll find all information. But the Discord is pretty active, and our fans are constantly, theory crafting about the game and talking about the DLC, etc. So that would be probably the first place to go if you want to talk about the game for sure. And definitely follow us on Twitter. I think we post on Twitter the most, the Death's Gambit Twitter, for updates. We'll usually link to, if we post a devlog on our Tumblr, then we'll always link it to our Twitter.
Oh
We
right,
also
what's
have a
your
Facebook
Twitch?
page, but yeah.
What's your Twitch? Because you do dev streams sometimes.
Right. We actually haven't done one in a while, but we will probably do some soon. And it is White's Rabbit. The account is called White's Rabbit because we couldn't get White Rabbit, so it's White's Rabbit. um, and just if you go to our Twitter or our Reddit, it'll be a link to our Twitch as well. And we just Alex will sometimes stream himself just doing some art, or I'll stream myself doing some farming. But yeah.
Yeah, that sums up everything rather neatly, I think. So, to the folks in the audience, thanks for tuning in. If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say to me, or also to Jean, because I can always pass it on. If you don't decide to lurk him on like Twitter, Twitch, Steam, Facebook, Discord, etc., you can just feel free to comment below. And for those interested in more indie reviews, developer interviews, podcasts, or our Monday TTRPG content, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know when there's a new release. There's also a Discord, my Discord, not that Discord, though it's also a good Discord. You can click the link in the banner or the description so you can be a part of our community, the Crit Hit Cauldron, and, sneak your community questions in before these interviews happen. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the channel, we currently have a coffee running right now to help supplement funds for our lovely editor and to make sure we can continue to provide quality content. Again, check the description plus the banner for dem links. Anywho, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.